Olá, TUTAMÉIA está ao vivo. E antes de mais nada, nós reafirmamos nosso apoio e solidariedade à campanha internacional pela liberdade do jornalista Julian Assange, preso político do imperialismo. Aliás, nesse dia de hoje, que é o Dia Internacional da Liberdade de Imprensa, a equipe Assange produziu um material especial que eu vou trazer aqui, esse cartaz que está sendo colocado em todas as redes aí. E estamos nós, então, aqui nos nossos estúdios domésticos, a Eleonora,
o Rodolfo,
e do outro lado da tela, mas aqui em São Paulo, conversa conosco o Michael Heinrich. I don't know if my pronunciation is correct, but anyway, um dos grandes estudiosos do mundo da obra de Marx. Mas eu vou deixar aqui que a Eleonora faça a apresentação de nosso convidado, como manda o figurino, e inicie, então, a nossa conversa deste início de tarde. Eleonora.
Michael, welcome to TUTAMÉIA. I will introduce you in Portuguese for our viewers. Michael Heinrich é cientista político, professor de economia na Universidade of Applied Science em Berlim e editor do PROCLA, Revista de Ciência Social Crítica. Michael também é um colaborador da Mega 2, instituição detentora e curadora dos manuscritos de Karl Marx e Friedrich Engels. Autor de vários estudos sobre o capital, seu trabalho se concentra na teoria marxista e na história da teoria econômica. Publicou pela Boitempo Karl Marx e o Nascimento da Sociedade Moderna, e está no Brasil para o lançamento do seu novo livro, quer dizer, do seu livro no Brasil. Já não é tão novo, já tem 20 anos, é publicado pela primeira vez no Brasil, Introdução ao Capital de Karl Marx, que está sendo lançado amanhã, sábado, aqui em São Paulo, no dia 4 de maio, amanhã, aqui em São Paulo, no galpão do MST, no centro da cidade. Michael, thank you so much for being with us today. I would like to begin asking you why is important to know and discuss the Marxism, the capital and the Marxism today.
Okay, first, thank you very much for the invitation to talk with you here. I think Marx Capital is very important to understand our contemporary society, contemporary economy. Of course, you cannot find every detail we are occupied with today, but in Capital, Marx is analyzing the basic structures of capitalism. And these basic structures are still working today. They are still functioning today. Of course, we need additional analysis about the concrete shape of capitalism in different countries, of new developments, but the basic structures we can learn from Marx. There is no alternative. And also, Marx didn't only give us an analysis. He also provided us with a very important critique, a critique of political economy, the bourgeois science about capitalism, but also a political critique about the capitalist structures, the capitalist, the way the capitalist world is working. And this critique, it's on different levels. Perhaps we can talk later in detail about it. But just to say here, this critique is also still valid. It is not overcome by new developments. It is not old-fashioned. No, it is actual. And insofar, I think we have to occupy with Marx. However, in your question, I had the feeling you identified or you equalized Marx and Marxism. And here I would do a certain differentiation. Marxism is all that what happened after Marx, all the interpretations, all the political tendencies. There is not only one Marxism, there are a number of Marxisms, and they not always fit to what Marx was talking. Insofar, I would make a difference. We have to occupy with Marx, especially with Capital. However, we should really go to the original source and not try to do an abbreviation with other literature or with other sources. And here you showed the picture of my introduction. This also counts for me. My introduction is not a substitute for reading Capital. I recommend to everybody, read Capital. I hope my introduction can help you, can support you, but you have to read Capital and not think there is a short way, reading a nice introduction and then.
So in the academy, or even among the left, there are always talk about how the thoughts of Marx or the works of Marx are not valid anymore. And people say the work, the world of work changed, and I'd like you to talk a bit about this, because people say that in Marx, one of the fundamental ideas is that the work is the only generator of value, and now we see, or there is like an idea that the value is in in the financial market. So can you tell us a bit about this? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I can. The critique that Marx would overrate labor, that also there are other factors, capital, which would produce value. All this critique is not very new. It existed already in 19th century. It comes again and again in a new shape, and then it is presented, oh, finally we learned Marx is not anymore actual, we have to throw away Marx. But I think this is completely wrong. Labor is the decisive force. We need production. And who is producing? The workers are producing. So no society can exist without labor, without production. And the capitalist society is a society where the product is not produced according a certain plan. It is produced by independent units, maybe a single craftsman, maybe a single company, and only on the market they come together with their products, and the general validation of the work they did is via value. Only when something can show it has value, then it is validated as a social accepted product. So the connection between labor and value is not something what belongs to a certain technique or a certain way to produce. It is a connection which belongs to this certain kind of society where all the producers depend on each other, because we have a social division of labor, but the producers, and I mean not a single person, as a producer, the producing units, the companies, the firms, they behave independently, atomistically from each other. They try to search to gain or maximize the individual profit, and only at the market a kind of socialization happens. And this socialization is only possible by this connection with from labor to value. And this basic structure, it existed in the 19th century, it existed in the 20th century, and it still exists in the 21st century. So this is the reason for this value theory of Marx. Now coming to the finance you mentioned. Finance Marx treats in his third volume of Capital. And now we come to a big problem that many Marxists or persons who have sympathies for Marx, when they read Capital, they read only volume 1. But also many critics of Marx, when they read Capital, they read only volume 1. And when they hear something about finance, they say, oh, this is beyond Marx. It is not included in volume 1. Marx also gave a basic analysis of interest-bearing capital, of what he called fictitious capital, bonds, shares, and so on. He gave a basic analysis of banking capital and the working of bank. And he showed that on the one hand, there are differences between capital which is producing something, Marx called this industrial capital, and financial capital, which deals with the so-called fictitious capital. The difference is that in the process of the industrial capital, commodities are produced, and when these commodities are exchanged, it is proved that they have value, surplus value. The financial market, not generally, but in big parts, has to do not with the production of value, but with the ascription of price. For example, a share, the price of a share of a company goes up and down at the stock market, not because the company which emitted this share produced more or less. The price of the share goes up and down because it is expected that this company will have bigger profits, the price goes up, or that this company will have smaller profits, the price goes down. Of course, when you buy a share with a low price and sell the share with a high price, you have a gain, and you think, oh, this gain, what does it has to do with labor? What does it has to do with production? This is in an immediate sense, it is correct. It is a result of buying for a low price, selling for a high price. But there is a relation to production, the expectation that the profits by production will rise or the profits by production will fall. So it is an indirect relation to labor, to production, and so on. It is not a world by its own. And this is, I would say, an achievement of Marx, especially in volume 2 and volume 3, that he shows that we cannot disconnect industrial capital from financial capital. And we cannot disconnect in both directions. The industrial capital needs the financial capital because the industrial capital needs, on the one hand, loans. On the other hand, it has temporary deposits, temporary money, which cannot immediately invest it. So this money is transformed in a deposit, which shall bring interest. The industrial capital needs financial capital. But on the other hand, the financial capital in its movement depends on the industrial capital. So it is not a new world, the finance, or it is not a disconnected world. No, it is one capitalist world with industrial and financial capital, and Marx already analyzed the basic structures of this connection.
Okay, so you're saying that despite the the hunger or the thirst of the financial capital for higher and higher interest taxes, interest rates, there is actually no basic contradictions between the industrial capital and the financial capital. Both are intertwined.
Exactly.
Or one of them is an obstacle to development of the other.
Okay, this is something else. Capital, also industrial capital, is an obstacle for itself. The point is that capital is always oriented to profit maximizing. It is not oriented to production maximizing, and above all, it is not oriented to satisfy our needs. That our needs somehow satisfied is a collateral damage of capital. Capital seeks profit, but already in this seeking for profit, capital produces crisis, and crisis produces bankruptcy of capital. Insofar, already before we speak about financial capital or the relation between financial and industrial capital, we can say capital is an obstacle for itself in so far it produces crisis. It can come out of this crisis, of course, it can become stronger, but only on the road to the next crisis. But the main obstacle, I would say, is capital for us human beings. Capitalism is, in some respect, a rather crazy way to organize the economy. We all suffer by this organization. Not only humans suffer, also the nature is destroyed. There is a danger that the capitalist economy will destroy the natural presupposition for human life. And insofar, I'm not so much in fear that capital is an obstacle for itself. I'm in fear that capital is an obstacle for us, and therefore we have to try to get rid of capitalism.
Good.
How so? I mean, there are lots of people in the world struggling and fighting and trying to communicate this idea. Do you think in the world there is any experience in that direction?
Okay, there is, of course, a lot of experience in the direction of fighting against capitalism. Fighting against capitalism on several levels. The fight against bad working conditions, the destruction capital is doing in a single production unit to the workers by bad working conditions. There is fighting against the environmental damage of certain production sites. And there is also the fight against that capitalism overtakes new branches, that everything is subordinated to producing profit, that, for example, in many countries, in former years, the health system was organized by the state. Now it is privatized, and the health system shall produce profit. And this is, of course, on the cost of the nurses and the persons who work there, and the patients who need the health service. So you have a lot of fights, experience in fight against capitalism. However, you also have experience in history from systems, from movements, revolutionary movements, who try to overcome capitalism, who try to install new socialist systems. And here we have experience, but the experience is not very positive, that a number of these socialist attempts very quickly became very authoritarian. They had to defend their power against a majority of people, and insofar we can have a lot of we have a lot of negative experience. We know what we should try to avoid, but I don't see a single nice model where we can say, oh, that's it, we should do it like that. We have to find out. It's a continuous process, and I'm rather sure the process will have different forms in different countries. There is not one recipe for all.
You talked about the crisis of capitalism. A lot of these crises end up in wars. So I'd like you to speak a bit about what the wars we're having now in the world represent for the status quo, for the capitalism as it is now. Can they help make changes in the balance of powers in the world?
You mean the connection of war and crisis? Okay. Okay, crisis comes without war. The capitalist crisis needs not a war to start. However, sometimes in history, the wars were a kind of exit from the crisis. For example, in the 1930s, the whole capitalist world was in a big crisis as a consequence of this enormous crash of 1929. The single governments tried to do some measures to overcome this crisis, but the big push was the Second World War. The capitalist economy transformed in a war of economy. It was produced until whatever was possible for the war. In the war, of course, a lot destruction happens, and the products were needed. So the Second World War, economically considered, was a way out of the crisis of the 30s. Of course, a way out with enormous human costs. And after the Second World War, the economy was not very stable. We had a second smaller war, the war in Korea, which then contributed to what is called, especially in Germany, the economic miracle, that you have high growth rates, the real wages growth, the profit rates growth. It seemed in the 50s and 60s that now a kind of capitalist heaven is reached, where everything is nice. But already in the 1970s, it was clear that this heaven is not doesn't prolong. We had again a time of crisis. However, if a war today is an exit from crisis, I have my doubts, because war, now we have atomic weapons. A war can result in a total destruction of the world, and it is not. I think war has changed. What we see nowadays are more limited wars. The atomic powers, they try to avoid an atomic confrontation, so wars are somehow limited. But these limited wars, they are not really an exit from crisis. At first, they are a difficulty for the capitalist countries. They must be financed. Insofar, I would say the relation between war and crisis has become much more difficult, much more unforeseeable. How the world will look in 10 years, I have no idea. It is not to foresee when you consider all the conflicts we have, the different wars in different kind of the world. We don't know, will it really escalate to an atomic war? Can we avoid such an atomic war? I think all this is not very clear in the moment, and insofar I wouldn't dare to give any kind of outlook for the next, for the next 10 years.
Michael, how about the relationship between the crisis of capitalism and the rise of the far right? We are seeing all over the world the far right is growing, and it seems that there is a relationship between this crisis and the workers losing rights. What do you think about the rising of the far right?
Okay, until now, when we talked about crisis, we talked about economic crisis, and there is a favorite theory among leftists that economic crisis, it leads to unemployment, to low wages, to precarious situation for the working class, and that all these problems contribute to a support of the far right, that people are disappointed from their abilities, that they don't trust social democratic parties or even more left parties, and then they go to the right. I think this is much too simple and even wrong. I don't know the situation in every country, of course, but I can speak about Germany, where we also have a rise of the far right. But the point is, this far right is not mainly supported by the persons who suffer economically, by unemployed persons or by persons with low income. These persons in Germany are mostly rather passive. They believe nobody will help me. Why shall I vote? Why shall I engage for something? Of course, a part votes for this far right. But in Germany, the strong basis for the far right is more a kind of petit bourgeois, let us say, independent craftsman who is economically rather good, has a rather good situation, but who is dissatisfied with a lot of social, cultural, political developments. And insofar, in order to understand the rise of the far right, we have not only to focus on economic crisis, we have to focus on cultural crisis, on political crisis. We have to focus on a kind of self-radicalization of a right-wing basis, which exists already before, but it didn't found the medium to articulate itself. In Germany, the opinion polls for this far-right party, AfD, they say between 15-20%. These 15-20%, okay, I would say half of them, they can also go away from the far right wing, but half of them, let us say 7-8%, they are really far right, and they were also far right 10 years, 20 years ago, but they were not visible like they are visible today. And that now they are visible and that they are attractive for another 8 or 10%. At least in Germany, it has more to do with cultural developments, with social changes than with an economic crisis. The biggest group of supporters of the far right in Germany are in an economic good situation and not they are not victims of an economic crisis. In other countries, I don't know. I would say in France, perhaps you can find more supporters of the far right among parts of the working class which are in a bad situation, but also there you have a middle class support for the far right, and also in Italy it is not only the victims of economic crisis who support in Italy, where you have not only one far right party, you have you can choose among them. You have more choice among far right than choice among leftist parties in Italy.
So, is there any relation between the Uberization of the work?
I didn't understand the word.
The Uberization, Uber.
Uber, yeah.
The Uberization of the work and the far right. Is there any relation in this? Do you see anything about this, or there? I mean, there's nothing to do.
I must say I'm not sure about this, because this so-called Uberization also in different countries has different extension. You have it, for example, in Germany to a not so big extension. Nevertheless, you have a rise of the far right. This Uberization, it undermines standards which the working class had fighted for, but it is as far as I can see, that above all, a precarious part of persons, migrants, for example, they now take these jobs provided by this Uberization. They are, I don't think that they are a big basis for the far right. Insofar, I wouldn't say that there is a big connection between this Uberization and the far right. At least for Germany, I can definitely say it is not the case, but I don't have the overview about all the countries in the world.
So what do you think the unions or the progressive parties should tell to these people? I mean, to the Uber work, to the precarious, the people that have these precarious jobs. Do they have the unions and the left part have a message to these people? And on the other side, what do you think Marx or what the capital could help unions and parties to organize a proposal or a message to all these people?
Okay, what the parties and the trade unions should do is rather clear. They should try to talk with these people, to cooperate with such people, to include them in their policy. However, there are big difficulties, and I would say mainly cultural difficulties. For example, the German trade unions, they are rather bureaucratic organizations. They are, as the big organization, they are not so very flexible. You have certain activists who try to be active and flexible, and they try to cooperate with the precarious persons, but it is not so easy because there are really two different cultures of organization, even of talking, and it is rather difficult. The attempts are made in not only in Germany, also in other countries, but it is difficult. And one difficulty is also that the persons in precarious jobs are very different in this Uberized working sphere. You can find students who have the idea, I will have later a certain career. Now for 2-3 years, I have to do a stupid job, but then a new big life will start. Of course, such a student is not very interested now to engage with a trade union. Also, many migrants believe, okay, they come in the country, they want to have a better life, and they accept a bad job is just the first step. And after this first step, it will come a second and a third step, and I will improve my situation. So in this precarious, people in this precarious situation, you have a lot of illusions about their own situation, and this illusion prevent a good organization, because everybody has the hope, oh, it's only for a limited time. So you have difficulties on the one hand from this bureaucratic trade unions, and you have on the other hand difficulties with this very different, very diverse number of precarious workers. With the left parties, it is very similar, at least in Germany. The Linke, the German left party, they try to support and to organize, but the party itself is rather small. It has very limited possibilities to do something. The Social Democrats, when you count them as left parties, they are very adjusted to the national capital. They have more the idea we must take care that the national capital will flourish. Then we have, on the one hand, well-paid jobs. On the other hand, we will have a high tax income, and with this tax income, we can finance a welfare state. But to organize precarious groups is not anymore the idea of social democratic parties. It would be more they are perhaps more seen as troublemakers and not as real partners. And this trend, also some trade unions follow this trend to stabilize the national capital, or even the capital what is investing here, and then we are a flourishing capital as side effects to have good jobs and tax money for the welfare state. And it is very difficult to criticize, or it's not difficult to criticize this. It's even easy to criticize this. It is difficult to have success with the critique. But for a real left party, I think this would be the task to criticize such strategies which are based on the cooperation of working class and capitalist class. We should try to argue that the working class has really different interests from the capitalist class, and that nothing helps than to fight, to do the struggle. But it's an enormous, difficult task.
Great. I'd like to go back to the beginning of this conversation, when you said that these are the ideas that Marx theory and Marx thoughts are outdated. This idea comes now and then. So why? I mean, what are the political interests that make this idea of that Marxism is outdated keep coming on?
The idea that it is outdated, you mean? What is the interest?
Yeah, like a propaganda against Marx
okay,
theory.
I think it's not, you cannot just say propaganda. It is a little bit more. You have in modern societies a lot of different developments. You have market, and the market gives some chances to persons. You have welfare state, which gives you the idea you can combine capitalism with a more or less good life for others. So there are, I would say, there are reasons for positions very different from Marx, and then you are confronted with such a fundamental critique like it is given by Marx, and you try to check and say, no, maybe it is too risky what Marx demands to abolish capitalism. A more secure strategy is to change capitalism, to make it more social, to make it more ecological, to work step by step. We will not have at once the big success, but step by step we will have success. Such ideas are rooted in the life of persons. I wouldn't say it's just propaganda. They have a real basis. And then what is also still an argument against Marx is the failure of systems like the Soviet Union or East Germany, states which proclaim that they are socialist states or even communist states, and where a party elite ruled in a very authoritarian way. And when these states break down, the majority of the people who lived in these states, they applauded this breakdown. They were in favor of it. Of course, many had illusions about the life in capitalism, but you must see the experience with attempts to abolish capitalism are not so encouraging that everybody wants to do this. We have to fight. We have to show, okay, Soviet Union is not the only possibility to have a kind of socialist system. There are other possibilities. But for this, we have to discuss, we have to argue, and I would say it is a little bit dangerous when we reduce all the counter arguments just to propaganda. Of course, there is propaganda. There is propaganda from right wing, from bourgeois parties, but even when there is propaganda, the question is, why can the propaganda be so successful? And this must have to do something with the life of the people, with the experience of the people. And we have to confront, we as leftists have to confront ourselves with these experiences and with the life of the people who are not in favor of socialist ideas.
Great. Today is the freedom of the press, World Day of Freedom of the Press. I'd like, Marx wrote about this, so I'd like to that you shared with us some of Marx's thoughts about the press, censorship, and the freedom of course, it's not in the capital, but
yeah, but it is nevertheless very important. Besides the book you mentioned, the introduction to the 3 volumes of Capital, I'm also working on a biography of Marx, where the first volume appeared also in Portuguese translation by Boy Tempo. And now I'm working on the second volume, and there these articles Marx wrote about freedom of the press play a crucial role. It was even the first article Marx wrote was about, or the first 2 even, he published was about the freedom of the press, a critique of censorship in Prussia. Marx in this time when he wrote about, he was not already a communist. He was a bourgeois radical. And so he argued, for example, among other arguments, that even the state needs the freedom of press, because by freedom of press, the state can learn about the real problems in society. When the state suppresses freedom of press, then the state suppresses information the state needs. This argument holds not only for the bourgeois state, of course, it holds also for any attempt for a socialist alternative. And later, Marx and Engels also supported freedom of the press, freedom of speech, not only as bourgeois demands, but of socialist demands. On the one hand, as long as the socialists are in opposition to a bourgeois state. Of course, they need the freedom of speech and freedom of press in order to criticize the bourgeois state. But also in a socialist society, you need this freedom of press. And I think even Marx and Engels, they couldn't imagine a free society without freedom of press and freedom of speech. Marx, in this first article, he quoted Tacitus with a sentence which also was then given by Spinoza, that in a free society, you can think what you want and say what you think, that this is a precondition for freedom. And I think this holds for the lifetime of Marx, and it should also be for every leftist who try to overcome capitalism. It should be important to stand to this freedom of the press and freedom of speech.
Great, Michael. We'd like to thank you very much for your time, for this time that you dedicated to TUTAMÉIA. A gente agradece também, aqui está agradecendo aqui a participação do Michael aqui no TUTAMÉIA. Agradecemos a todo o pessoal que se reuniu aqui para acompanhar essa entrevista, e lembramos que essa conversa fica disponível em todos os canais TUTAMÉIA. É só buscar por TUTAMÉIA TV e você nos encontra nas várias plataformas de podcast, no Twitter, no Facebook, no YouTube. No YouTube, não deixe de se inscrever no nosso canal e clicar na sinetinha para receber avisos de novos vídeos. Visite também o nosso site, TUTAMÉIA. O endereço é tutameia.jor.br. E agora, então, antes do tchauzinho, do boa tarde, a gente vai devolver a palavra para o Michael para ele fazer o fechamento dessa entrevista. Michael, now, with no questions, but the mic is yours, the floor is yours, so that you can say what you want to the people that are with us here and that will be with us along the internet. Thank you very much.
So you mean now I have free speech? I can say what I
want.
Your message, whatever you want.
Okay, I just can repeat my message from the beginning. Read Marx, read Capital, all the 3 volumes. They form a unit. Don't stop after volume 1. With my books, with this now published introduction to the 3 volumes, I want to give support for this, but not substitute it. Try to come together with other persons, try to think about what we can do, how we can fight about capitalism, how we can study together. If you are in Sao Paulo in the moment, tomorrow, 4th of May, it is 1 day before Marx's birthday, we have a birthday party organized from Boitempo and the movement of landless people here in Boitempo. I myself will present my book there. There will be also a lot of other events, discussions, and you are all invited to come. This is what we have to do, to come together, to see what we can do, and sometimes also to enjoy and to have a party. So thank you very much. I enjoyed to be here, and I wish the best to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye. Tchau, pessoal.
Tchau.
Bye.